Tom, it seems like when we're interacting with a consumer, being a problem solver is a real positive. But if you're a problem solver for events on the inside of the retail store, that maybe isn't such a good thing.
Well, it's not if you want the store to grow. You know, I witnessed too many stores, I'm afraid, you know, that just because Joe knows the answer, that nobody really works very hard to learn for themselves because they can count on Joe. Joe will figure it out for me. Let's go ask Joe. That's a pretty miserable life for Joe, to get right down to it, because, you know, they never feel relaxed and they don't feel like they can take a day off. You know, maybe this will ring with some resonance to some of the people watching, but, you know, they feel like if they go play golf, they haven't got time. You know, I can't get away for a couple of days. You know, if you can't get away for a couple of days from your business, you haven't got much of a business. You have a job. So I find that most people, you know, the only way they're really going to grow their business, the only way they're going to be able to multiply efforts, or the only way they're going to get any peace in their own life is to be able to teach rather than just take care of every little crisis as it occurs.
So what that really says is somebody, the manager, somebody hasn't been a good coach, a good teacher, and those people, if they know their job, they're not perhaps capable of doing it.
Well, it could be a bad hire. I mean, we all have made those. But I would also say that it could be a situation where I don't think anybody purposefully says, I'm not going to teach. I want to keep the knowledge for myself. I mean, we would hope not. That's rather short-sighted. But the reality is, you know, when we had kids in school, you know, it did us no good to do the homework for them. You know, just for me to sit down and do the math answers and then give them to the kid to hand into the teacher next day, you know, the goal wasn't for the math homework to be completed. The goal wasn't really to get the passing grade. The goal was to teach the kid how to deduce for themselves so that they could figure out how to arrive at this answer. Many times I think we're guilty of doing the homework for the student, if you will, figuratively speaking. And I think that, you know, we're doing everybody a bit of a disservice to do so.
So basically, if you're a manager or a coworker, a situation like this happens. Hey, Bob, can you do this for me? That's an opportunity, no matter who you are, to help them understand how to do the task themselves.
That's true. And the only thing I'd probably add to that is sometimes you have to, in the interest of time, you know, if there's a customer standing here at the counter and she needs an answer, you know, we need to give her an answer. So, you know, if Joe needs to figure the problem out and get it explained to the customer, get her on her way or off the phone, whatever it may be. But, you know, don't let the lesson go away. This needs to be a teaching lesson that once the customer is satisfied, now we say, okay, let's go back and revisit this. Show me your work. Show me how you do. That's the first thing a teacher does. You know, if it's a good math teacher, they say, show me your work. Well, that's what I want to know. If you're having a little trouble figuring out how to figure the fill on a carpet job, or you're having a little trouble figuring out how many cartons or the patterns in ceramic tile, whatever, a lot of it all boils down to math eventually. You know, or installation-related questions. Show me your work. It may seem like you haven't got time to do this, but quite frankly, you are buying yourself time in the future for a little time being well spent right now.
So it really is imperative that the manager, in a sales meeting or right there on the sales floor after the customer leaves, to make sure that you straighten it away, leave the salesperson with the knowledge to do whatever that task was.
Yeah, and I think, you know, usually they always say praise in public and criticize in private. So this isn't criticism. This is teaching. This is knowledge. You might be surprised, bring it up at your regular staff meeting. You might be surprised how many other people around the table didn't know, but it hadn't come up yet, or they'd been too scared to ask. The only thing I would say is, as we're making corrections here, remember the saying, you know, criticize the act, not the actor. Say, you know, Susie, I thought we knew this. You've been making good progress, but obviously you don't understand this. We can do better. Let's go back. Let's focus on the act. But we say, you know, Susie, I've been through this 100 times. What are you, dense? You know, we wouldn't maybe say that literally, but that could be the tone in our voice, or that could be the language that, you know, our body's speaking. Then that's kind of becomes confrontational. So, you know, don't talk about the person that's actually doing the learning. Let's talk about the task that we're trying to learn. You'll be much more productive if you maintain that attitude.
It would seem a good idea to take this up at a sales meeting. I suppose if one of the staffers has a problem with a particular task, it wouldn't be a stretch to imagine others have the same problem.
No, and you may just say, you know, something that came up this week is on a more proactive point. You know, I used to always have, 8 to 10 minutes at our staff meetings, sales meeting, call them what you wish, that I would ask the staff what lesson they would like covered next Friday. Ours happened to be on Friday. But you could do agendas for the half your life and you'd never come up with some of this. You know, they may say, let's cover transition strips for laminate flooring. Those mystify me. Or, let's figure out how to figure out what the trims and shapes on ceramic tile is. And usually 2 or 3 sitting around said, yeah, I don't know that either. You let them give you the topic, and then, that gives you license to come back now and explain it next week. Maybe you assign a little homework. Say, here's what I want you to figure out between now and next Friday. But it's not done grudgingly because basically they asked for the help. Mm-hmm. Most of us want help. We're just a little too proud or we're a little too bashful to ask. And then the old saying, you don't know what you don't know. We really want the help, but what we want is positive, constructive help. We just don't need somebody criticizing us.
And really, if you get one person in that sales meeting say, yeah, I really need help here, that might open the floodgate for everybody else to chime in as well.
They will do that, or you might be surprised when somebody aside of them that's a little more seasoned says, well, we don't need to spend time on that Friday. After the meeting, I'll show you. And that's really what you're hoping for because, that's when you start getting a little teamwork going and a little mentoring going on. That's the best you could hope for right there.
Is that something that you should promote, the older guys helping the younger guys?
Oh, I don't want to say older and younger. I want to say
more
those who have, well, I don't even want to say that. I want to say those who are a little more up with it. I always say, if I'm having a problem with my computer, I want to ask the youngest person in the room because they probably understand or it's more intuitive to them. Just because you got gray in your hair doesn't mean you know all these answers. So, more senior people, yes, or maybe people that have experience if it's an installation-related question. This may be a question for the service manager. It may not be a question for another salesperson at all. But, find the guy in the room that's got the most knowledge in this area. But I'm not even sure just because somebody's been doing it 20 years. Sometimes that's 1 year's experience repeated 20 times,
yeah.
If they haven't really kept up with what's current.
Now, when you first hire a salesperson, sometimes square footage in a particular room is very confusing to people. I know it's confusing to customers walking in the front door. How do you get them from here to there in terms of absorbing all this needed way to solve these problems?
My personal experience was not only do you, personally coach them, but come up with some worksheets. I keep referring back to the math class that we had in school, but what do? They hand you a worksheet. When you're in 2nd grade, take it home, fill out the answers, bring it back in the morning. If you're in high school, it's calculus or algebra. It's considerably different, but it's a worksheet. There's not a reason in the world you can't come up with 6 or 8 or 10 or 110. I don't care how in-depth you want to do this, but come out with some typical hypothetical layouts, for example. Start with a living room, dining room, and hall. Something's pretty simple, but then after a while, maybe you got a pie-shaped steps or an angular corner in the room, something like that, where they keep progressing along. But those are not hard to come up with. I just had someone who just ran off on the copier. There also, you can have a little fun with them. You just do schematic, for example, of a backsplash, let's say a kitchen backsplash, and say, now, I want you to figure me a backsplash here. It's got a minimum of 2 different tiles, or I want you to do this on the diagonal. So not only do you figure quantities, but also you can get them thinking just a little bit as far as how creative can I be. Now tell me, we would assign those for our staff meetings. I'd give them one. I'd say it's got to be at least 2 tiles, and bring it next Friday morning, share it with us. Show us what you came up with. You got to practice. I say it all the time, though, practice, practice, practice. We never practice. The only time we ever stop to figure out quantity on a floor is when we actually have a live customer in front of us. It'll take forever to get good.
So as a manager, if you end up being the chief problem solver, or you have a staff member that ends up being a chief problem solver for the rest of the staff, it's time to take some action.
You better hope they stay healthy, stay out in front of buses. Because, you know, if they're making all the decisions at your store, you know, you're really rather limited as to what your growth can be and as far as what your future of your business can be if you hope for it to grow.